regular meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission is now in session for December 2nd, 1993. And with that, I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Panay? Collin?
Here.
Castanis?
Here.
Cox? Fletcher?
Here.
Yee?
Here.
Toby Johnson?
Here. I'd like to inform everyone that this meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the government affairs channel on the Sacramento cable system. Today's meeting is being cablecast live and will be repeated at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. If anyone in the audience or viewing audience wishes a copy, VHS copies are available for checkout from any library branch within the County of Sacramento. Members of the audience who do wish to address the Commission, we would ask that you fill out a speaker identification form to be found on the back table or here at the front table next to the secretarial staff, and pass it to the clerk of the board, who will in turn pass it to me as the chairperson. And when you're addressing us, the two microphones are balanced, so if you speak between the two, you'll get good voice carry, and we can all hear better if that is done. With that, I would like to go to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda today was to have been a closed executive session. However, due to the unfortunate passing of Dave Cox's father on Tuesday, he had to go to Southern California for the services, which are today, and asked if we would be willing to postpone this session until the next meeting, which will be the first part of January. Is that our next meeting?
That's correct. January 6th.
January 6th. And I'd ask the members of the Commission if they have any objection to postponing the closed executive session.
That's fine.
Does that require an action?
It does not.
Okay, then I would declare that the executive session will be January 6th at our next regular meeting.
That is St. John's Day in the Christian calendar.
Oh, it is? And we'll also observe on that day St. John's Day.
St. John's Day.
All of those of you who are interested in the Christian religion. I shouldn't be facetious. Terry's always giving me these little bits of knowledge that I never had before.
I thought it was Epiphany.
But, with that, we'll go to the second item on the agenda today, Commission Legal Counsel discussion. Action required, Commission discretion. Okay, Mr. Blair.
Mr. Chairman, this was a request by Mr. Cox from last meeting as well.
Oh, okay. That was to have been a part of our discussion today, and he was going to bring forward his thoughts on the matter. Is that right?
I believe that to be correct.
Okay. If it's agreeable, we'll continue.
Let's continue that.
Okay. Need a motion to continue to? No motion required. Moving on to item 3. This is going well. We're going to achieve a record here today. Tolling Cable Act regulations. Rich, a resolution on the tolling commission of the commission is requested. You want to give us the background on that?
I would. Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. I'm recommending that you toll the analysis and final determination of Sacramento Cable's rate regulations. Background in trying to bring this into perspective. Nationwide, the first such day for filing the benchmark numbers was November 15th. This is the first time this has been done across the country, and that was the first day. The stack of forms is 30 pages. The analysis is going to take some time. In the filing, Kim has said that their filing is not complete. They've asked for additional time to make changes as they review it. We need time as well. The Cable Act specifically envisioned this at its in developing the regulations. And before you is a flag on the yellow book that we have, that Brent's prepared with the regs, that addresses this, which is a request that we toll the process for 90 days. The language we've proposed in our resolution parallels that exactly. Let me give some background on why the importance of this. Besides it being new and all that we've been through over the years on deciding to move forward in lobbying for cable rate regulation and making your determination to do that in May and June. I've got to put this in perspective. Since this commission, since inception of this commission a little over 10 years ago, you've really made two major decisions. 10 years ago this month, you awarded the franchise to Cablevision of Sacramento. Time goes fast.
That's a celebration.
And your second major decision was about 5 years ago, in a major legal settlement with then Sacramento Cable Television. Recall that in 1988 we had a series of lawsuits back and forth, and there was a major settlement, the $15.3 million in and all the other issues that were tied to it. In my opinion, that was the second biggest decision that you've made. Coming up in the next 90 days, if you approve this tolling today, I believe is your third biggest decision. The benchmark rates under the new Cable Act are ones that you will live with for the balance of the franchise. Our franchise runs for another 30 years. The calculation of the benchmark is on 30 or 40 pages of numbers. The benchmark rate is a per channel rate. That is a rate per channel to 3 decimals. Each 1 penny change in that rate has an impact, Mr. Yee, in net present value terms, of about $25 million to Sacramento subscribers. So the analysis of this needs time, needs precision. We need an opportunity to engage in dialogue back and forth with Sacramento Cable Television as these numbers are refined. The resolution before you tolls that process, authorizes staff to enter into dialogue with Sacramento Cable Television to refine, enhance, and determine what the numbers are, and bring back to you staff's recommendation for that benchmark within the 90-day period. If any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Yes, Jerry.
Has this extension, Rich, has it come at the request of Mr. Ruckert, or is it from you, or is it mutual?
The request and the recommendation is from staff. It is a franchising authority's option.
They did request in their
Right.
letter of November 15, however, additional time to submit part of the submission.
Right.
But this particular request is at our request.
Right. I haven't had an objection from Kim. We could probably ask Kim if he has a problem with taking the additional time.
Mr. Ruckert, do you have any comment to offer on?
You wouldn't object, I'd like our controller, Mr. Jones, to address that, and he's speaking.
Okay, he had indicated he wanted to speak, so we'll ask Kevin Jones then to come forward.
Toby? I'd like to ask a question to Rich.
Oh, sorry.
Does FCC have any guidelines as to how these rates are addressed? In other words, Sac Cable has to present information on all their costs to back up their proposed rates? Is that...
The FCC guidelines are evolving. I was on the phone with the FCC not less than an hour ago. They've set up a series of phone numbers where you call in and say, on these two forms, the calculation goes this way, should it go this way? And they will get back to you by voice or fax as quickly as possible. Because it's new, there is not a body of documents yet that explain all the details. The regulations go into what is intended. But oftentimes, when you take the regs and begin to apply them, there are levels of interpretation. The forms themselves provide a high measure of documentation and support. Your regulations ask the operator to provide us additional supporting documentation as well. I think the amount of information isn't the problem. It's getting together and understanding it collectively between us as we go through the spreadsheet.
And when this all settles down, are we talking about that basic rate of 37 cents per channel?
That's correct.
Is that what we're driving
That's
at?
what we're talking about.
Okay.
Is this an FCC matter as related to SAC Cable, or is this something that we must enter into as a commission?
Mr. Fletcher, it's both. Under the regulations from the FCC and the regulations adopted by this commission, it's a franchising authority matter as it applies to the basic service tier. In our terms, that means limited basic. It is a FCC matter as it applies to what the Cable Act calls the cable programming services tier. Here's what we call full basic. So it's a shared activity. However, the FCC has said that they are going to rely heavily on the analysis and the determinations by franchising authorities in the reviews they make of complaints about the basic service tier rates. Overall, the FCC has said the rate must be the same for both categories of service. The per channel benchmark is the same for limited basic as for full basic. You make the determination and the decision on limited basic. The FCC then makes the determination on full basic, but they say they will rely heavily on the decisions made at the local level.
Is it true then that FCC is expecting this commission to make such an analysis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Toby?
Yes, Jim.
Another question. If we're involved in trying to arrive at a number for SAC Cable, which is our local franchisee, how would that be on a national level? Is there a potential that we can set one rate here and some other cable company in San Francisco will have a different rate?
Absolutely. The calculation of the benchmark rates, and I don't recall if you were here in May when we went through the process, using the benchmark approach is driven by a table that's included in the regulations that puts number of subscribers across the top, number of channels, and then down one side the number of satellite channels, and gives you a 3-digit decimal. And that's the starting point. And those factors, those three variables, are different in Stockton and Modesto and San Francisco. Rates will be different. For example, Sacramento Cable has, in September, implemented a benchmark rate of approximately 0.389. The rates in the Bay Area in some systems are 0.74. So there is not a nationwide implication. It applies on a franchise area and then on a system area, or by system throughout the country.
But if I may add, Mr. Yee, the rules are the same. In other words, these regulations are federal regulations. They apply to all, but the results that they bring forth will be different in every instance.
So it behooves us to make sure that the information that's provided to the commission is in fact
full, complete, and correct.
Confirmed?
That's correct.
Or audited, or whatever the right proper word is? And that would be your job?
Reliable would be, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Mr. Jones, if you'd like to give comments.
Good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner, and excuse me, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'd like to make a correction. First of all, a comment was made with the franchise runs for another 30 years. It potentially runs for another 30 years as we have an option to renew down the road. Secondly, I'd like to clarify a few points mentioned in the tolling document attached to the agenda for today. I don't believe that we stated our filing was incomplete or that we, in fact, requested additional time. We merely stated that we were unable to provide the auditor's opinion at this time due to the fact that it was a relatively new thing across the country. No one else was dealing with audited FCC Form 393s at that time, and our audit firm was actually in the process of developing the scope and the actual procedures to perform the audit. I'm happy to say that they are in our offices today working on this, and we should be able to provide those, hopefully as soon as December 22nd of this year. So they will be provided in the very near future. Secondly, I'm not sure where the reference to first filing in a series of filings totaling over 40 pages comes from. I turned in about 20 pages, if I remember correctly. I'm not aware of anything else that's required at this time. And it was also suggested in the document that rather than reject our submission as being incomplete, a 90-day tolling should occur. And that obviously is the right of this board to determine. However, according to Section 3.4 of your recently adopted regulations, basic service tier regulations, it states that in the event that the company does in fact submit this document without submitting the accompanying auditor's opinion, that the commission may, in its sole discretion, deem the company's Form 393 incomplete and shall return the incomplete form to the company within 5 days. And that did not happen, we were under the assumption that the commission had in fact deemed the Form 393 complete at that time. Therefore, I don't know that that is sufficient reason alone to toll the rate approval process for an additional 90 days. The document also states the resolution would allow staff time to correspond with SCT, clarify and resolve factual ambiguities that were submitted in the form. I haven't received any correspondence at all stating that there were problems with the submission. It obviously, it was our intent to complete the forms as accurately, as timely as possible, and in accordance with the guidelines established by the FCC. And any problems surely would be identified both by the independent auditors as well as the local regulatory authority, and would be totally counterproductive. So we believe that we submitted them in accordance with the guidelines.
You want to respond to that, Mr. Esposito?
Surely. First off, if they did submit in accordance with the guidelines, the auditor certification is not here. So that the degree and time and analysis that I will be, and Brent and I will be applying to this document doesn't really start until I know that the beginning data have been, that the opinion of the auditor is that the beginning data is correct. So that's why I say that the submission was incomplete. The auditor certification, while in progress and forthcoming very soon, isn't here. And rather than rejecting the whole document, I would rather work with the company. Brett and I have one pending your authority, intend on writing a list of questions to the company of the nature of, we don't understand the derivation of this number. Did you mean this? Was this number transposed? The reference from page 7 doesn't tie to the reference on page 4. Could you please clarify which are correct? We want to send a list of questions to the company, asking them to clarify things. So then, as we plug it into our spreadsheet, we can be sure that the numbers generate the same way. I mean, we worked yesterday. The spreadsheet in our end starts like this.
But you had not communicated with Mr. Jones on this prior to now?
No, because one, I wanted authority from you in order to proceed. Two, without the auditor certification from the cable company, we have not spent a tremendous amount of time in analyzing the information. We see that it's the cable company's auditor that will give us the reliability and the starting point from which to move forward.
Can I ask the question of the gentleman? When will that audited form be available?
I believe it would be around the 21st, 22nd of this month.
Okay.
As I mentioned, there are auditors in the building today, and
Right.
we'll be back again next week to try to finalize
Right.
the field work by the end of next week, and then it may take them approximately a week to prepare the actual report.
But you can understand why Rich is hesitant on proceeding without that audit?
I understand that totally.
Okay.
My only point was that it was provided for in the original basic service regulations, and in that they were not returned as specified in the document, we went under the assumption that...
A point that has to be, I think, we've missed here. If you don't toll the process for 90 days, the rates automatically take effect on December 15th. So that would mean they would be taking effect without audited data, without analysis. And I don't believe that would be an appropriate decision-making base.
Yeah, so you want us to extend that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In that a prompt determination of a fair rate is really in everyone's best interest. I'd like to suggest that if tolling is approved, that it's approved with the understanding that staff devote its best efforts to reviewing and approving these rates just as soon as possible, preferably
Absolutely.
within 30 days of receipt of the additional documentation that will be provided. And that way, obviously no later than the 90-day tolling if that's the decision, but that will allow Sacramento Cable to correct customers' bills as quickly as possible. I think that's the goal, is to make sure we're billing our customers properly just as soon as we possibly can.
Sounds fair.
No, there's no objection from staff. This will become a near full-time project, the importance of which I think I've already described to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Additionally, I'd like to advise the Commission that we plan to credit customers' accounts for any adjustments that are necessary, as opposed to issuing refund checks, primarily because the size of the adjustments that would be necessary and the additional cost of actually processing refund checks and mailing them out.
Did this juggling of channels and so on, which you found yourself out of necessity performing, does that affect rates in any way, or is it another topic?
It absolutely does, in that we talked about a benchmark rate per channel. When the calculation is finalized and you come up with a rate per channel, that is multiplied by the number of channels on a particular level of service to get the corresponding rate for that service level.
I think this was a confused situation, which was not of your making, was it? It was an attempt to comply with the regulations, which even seem to be changed in the midstream.
They were changing almost daily.
Has that now calmed down so that...
For the most part, it has, but as Rich referred to earlier, there are still points of clarification that need to be obtained from the FCC, and depending on who you speak with at the FCC, you can get two different responses to the exact same question. So they're still trying to get some things clarified amongst themselves. So it will evolve as we go forward, I'm sure. One other thing I would like to ask is the Commission's permission to, when we do get to the point of adjusting subscribers' bills for any variances to the service levels as far as rates are concerned, if we might be allowed to net the adjustments out to one item on the customer's bills as opposed to providing a separate adjustment for the economy basic tier, the full basic tier, converter box, remote control rental, that type of thing. Hopefully avoiding a lot of confusion for the subscribers.
I have a question on that.
Mr. Chairman, members, I'd like to comment on that. While there's no staff objection to SAC Cable's request at this time, I'd like to call your attention to page 22 in the yellow book in front of you. Section at the left at the bottom, section 76-942. The decision on whether or not there are refunds or credits to subscribers is yours. The company may request it, but the company does not make the decision, and that's one that you will be able to decide later on. The issue of billing detail, I'm not sure is addressed in the regs and how that would be displayed, but I would hope that it would have some way of informing subscribers the basis for adjustment to their bill via disclosure or notice or something else. I think that's only reasonable to not tie up all our phone lines with why is this on my bill. But page 22 dictates or says what the rules are relative to refunds. And by the way, if you order refunds, you have the right to order interest on those refunds as well.
Didn't we just hear the cable company saying they're offering to volunteer to refund?
No, I heard the cable company say they requested that it be a credit to subscribers' bill rather than a refund. Right. Oh. A refund would be they cut you a check for $1. A credit would be
a credit to
the
Is there an
advantage
to getting a refund as opposed to a credit?
There's certainly an advantage to the company in that it is less expensive probably to process a credit than it is to process a check.
Well, but aren't we talking about this way ahead of time?
That's right.
This is not even on our agenda for today. We don't have any of this on here.
Possibly pennies. We're talking about, based upon the forms that were submitted, an average of maybe 4 to 8 cents per month credit to customers. And I think we would all believe that it would be somewhat unrealistic to process a check, pay 29 cents postage to mail somebody a refund check for 30.
But it's your choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that once we've had a full explanation of that and once we understand what the options are and how to proceed, I agree with Rich. There ought to be some disclosure of some sort, but we certainly don't have that issue before us today because we don't even have your audited reports yet.
I'm sorry, Supervisor, I didn't mean to cut you off. The other thing to keep in mind is that the rates that are quoted, if there's a 4, 5, 6, 8 cent rate per month, we're talking about going back in time too, and you have a churn problem. Some of the people who were on, who paid those monies are no longer there and that sort of thing. You will get a chance to decide that in the context of whatever you've decided regarding the rates. All we're trying to do is keep the record clean when the comment is made, we want to request this, and no comment is made from the Commission. We don't want the argument later, like you heard a moment ago, well, we thought there was no objection because we didn't hear from you. So we're just saying that's something you will decide. The regulations put it in your hands. And by the way, the interest is mandatory. The FCC requires interest at IRS rates on those. So whatever it is, and you will decide it later.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. One other party wanted to speak on this matter, Mr. Stoller. Is that correct? Stoller? David Stoller?
Yeah, that's off agenda.
Oh, you had it listed here as number 3. You want to speak at?
Off agenda.
Okay. You said request to speak on item 3.
There's no one else coming forward.
We'll let you speak at the close. I thought your remarks were more directed towards the final part of the meeting. Okay.
If there's no one else coming forward, I'll move the resolution.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve the resolution as presented. Please call a roll for a vote.
Panay?
Aye.
Collin?
Yes.
Castanis?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Yee?
Yes.
Toby Johnson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 4, franchisee licensee update. This is Kim.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Council.
Afternoon.
Excuse me, I have a cold, so I'll just try not to hack all over
This time of year, everybody's getting cold.
I'm here just to report briefly on the update on the cable system. As of November the 22nd, we have removed all traps out of the system, and in that period of time removed 18,969 traps. We currently have 42 people that have not had their trap removed, but that is at their wishes that we schedule a different appointment to be there for whatever reason to have it taken out. But they should be, according to our scheduling, should be completed by the end of this week based on their schedule.
Thank you.
During the last meeting, I indicated that we have had some very heavy installation and of additional outlets and a lot of capacity changes. And I just wanted to report to you that I think I indicated that we were doing as many as 500 installations a day. Currently and normally we would do about 60, 70 installations of additional outlets a day. Today we're still doing 140 installations a day of additional outlets, or double our capacity. Our service calls right now are running just at around 10,000 calls a month. Our installations are running, and that's total installations of all types of things from converters to new installations to whatever, around 12,500 per month. And our disconnects are running somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8,000 a month. The reason for bringing that up is because of the impact to our total telephone system, and since that is an issue somewhere down the road, I thought I might bring it to the table today just so that you know. Our average on hold time right now is running just at around 4 minutes or less. A lot of this is caused from the tremendous amount of calls and additional outlets and extra work that's being done. And also, although our service is being done in the field in a 24-hour period, we are experiencing a tremendous amount of service calls from people that have installed their own additional outlets. And now they've, because there is no charge for them, they've gone out and installed as many as 4 or 5 additional outlets in their home on their own, and now are starting to experience ghosting problems, grainy lines, things like this, because a cable line is only capable of handling so many splits before the signal becomes so degraded that it's not functioning properly. That is a enlarged amount of our increased service calls at this point in time. Our service calls have been substantial, but they are dropping. We are almost down to the current level that we were at prior to September of 1993. But still, the phones and all the changes on the bills and continuing to get large amounts of service calls, as I said, for the additional outlets that have been run on their own. So we are running in the office at about a 4-minute on-hold time, which, by the way, is an improvement from September and October, from the 10 and 15 minutes down to 4 minutes. We currently have 70 CSRs operating. And as I said, it's down from to 4 minutes from 10 minutes. And just to give you a little bit of an update on our public relations that Darby Patterson's been involved in, we have just recently granted the Sacramento Reading Center with a $5,500 grant from Scripps Howard and Sacramento Cable to help literacy, which is a group through the Sacramento Food Bank. During the month of during Thanksgiving, we contributed 4 truckloads of food to the food bank given by our employees, and also 100 turkeys to be given to Father Dan and his organization. On December 8th, we will spearhead an anti-violence forum in the Kennedy High School, which this forum will be directed to help educate 2,000 students about violence. And we have also launched, as we have in the last 2 years since I came here, our Toys for Tots program, which will be giving our customers a discounted installation up till and through Christmas for a donation of a new toy, which we will then contribute to Toys for Tots. And last year, I think we gave somewhere in the neighborhood of approximately 40,000 toys, one of the largest contributors in the city. And also, we have just recently been recognized with Team Tisdale for promoting drug-free environment and violence and reduction of violence in the school system just last week. So we are very involved in the community, as we have been all along for the last couple of years. And I do see our situation as far as our phones improving. I see the capacity just starting now. It's down almost 3 times lower than where it was on additional outlets. Hopefully, we are expecting in the month of December, hopefully before Christmas, that we will be in complete compliance again with our 30-second on hold time, and that we believe that we have resolved the situation with the traps, and all of our customers should be able to view all 29 channels with the exception of those limited 42 customers.
Well, we find that a very positive report, and thank you very much, Tim. We'd like to also express our appreciation and commendation to all of your employees for their willingness to participate in such a generous way with the community when there is a great need, and all that you've done is going to be put to good use. I think it's very commendable.
Yeah, I think so too, and thank you.
Okay, we'll go to item 5, and there's no further comments on that. Item 5 then, Ron Cooper. Where are you? Item 5 is a report from the grantee status.
Before we hear from the grantee, on the last issue, we never hear from Pac West. Aren't they operating anymore?
At last report, Pac West had completely converted to the wireless service, and their hardwire service was no longer in existence.
So they don't have a hardwire company at all?
To the best of my knowledge, no. There was reconstruction at the as a Country Club Center, Country Club Plaza, whichever one it was. When that reconstruction took place, they went to a wireless service. As far as Cable America goes, they are invited to attend. I understand they are continuing their engineering make-ready activities, but had no significant comment and didn't fly out from Phoenix.
They're still operating in North Highlands, is that?
Cable America is the company you've issued a license to at Mather, which is in the process of expanding their service off of Mather. They are somewhat impeded by the current lawsuit that we're trying to resolve. But I am in contact with Richard Houghton from Cable America. He had nothing significant to report, and therefore it didn't come out.
And Pac West then has no responsibility with us now because they're running a microwave system, is that correct?
Right now, that's correct. If you recall the Video Customer Service Act that you recommended that each of the jurisdictions approve, the Board of Supervisors approved this week. The ordinance amendment got first reading. The City Council hears it next week, Galt next week as well. Well, when all those are approved, the ordinance amendments are in place, your commission staff, your commission will have responsibility for customer service assistance to people at Pac West, people taking satellite services that you might see in a mobile home park, as well as the forthcoming direct broadcast satellite. Other than customer service starting in January, we have no other review or access or activity with Pacific West.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ron, are you going to highlight your comments?
I'll highlight. Yes. I put this down on paper so you could read in detail our report for the month. I'm Ron Cooper, Executive Director at Access Sacramento. And basically, I wanted to bring the Commission up to speed on something that is very important in terms of our current and future planning. And I've already come before the City Council, so several members are aware of the offer that's been extended to Access Sacramento to manage a property at 12th and C Streets here in the downtown area, and to also, as a 501c3 organization, to manage a nonprofit bingo facility. It would be centrally located, a media resource center, paid for in part by revenue generated by a legal, completely licensed, honorably managed nonprofit bingo. And the Access Sacramento Board has authorized staff and our attorney to enter into negotiations with the owners of the property. And I wanted to report that those negotiations continue There have been some reports in the media as though we were already in place with lease in hand, and that's not currently the case, although that is our hope at this point. The key areas that our board is keenly aware of, and I want this commission to understand that as well, that this is our shared interest, that we want to make sure that the facility, particularly the nonprofit bingo operations, are managed with an experienced hand, that careful expense and revenue projections are made, that adequate exit language is incorporated into our lease agreement, and we want to make sure that the resources that we provide stewardship on behalf of this commission are protected, and we are seeking and inviting collaborative nonprofit organizations to share in the structure of the nonprofit bingo and also the revenue derived from it, and that we're acutely aware that nonprofit bingo is viewed by some as inappropriate, even though legal for nonprofits, and that many nonprofits do a myriad of wonders with the revenue generated. But we are sensitive that there are those critical of such an endeavor, and we are addressing those concerns as well. We've attended various public meetings, City Planning Commission, Sacramento City Council meetings, and are proceeding. The key element, I think, that this commission I would really want you to be very cognizant of, and that is that we do understand and appreciate that cable revenues are designed and intended for cable purposes only, and that in these negotiations we are protecting and respecting that desire. We envision this facility not as a bingo facility, but as a community media resource center. The upper floor is 14,000 square feet. Currently, our operations for 7 years have been in 2,700 square feet, 3 classroom spaces, where we facilitate literally thousands of Sacramento County residents in production of radio and television. So 14,000 square feet would offer us the opportunity to expand our current facility and to include other organizations as well, and that we would do so based in part on the revenues that would be generated per the bingo operation, and be working with those nonprofits both downstairs and upstairs at this facility. We'd approach the build-out of that second floor, if it is successfully negotiated, in a very deliberate way, not spending money until it's money in the bank, but hoping to secure the cooperation of other like-minded organizations in the public and private sector. Why is this important to us? Well, it is very important. One of the very important reasons is that this commission has expressed the desire that all of the community programming grantees do everything possible to secure additional revenues in a responsible way. This is but one example of that. We are literally overwhelmed at times with the community response in our current production facility. The latest being a Russian immigrant group that is noteworthy because it's comprised of many television professionals that worked in the Soviet Union and now have relocated and plan on producing 7 hours of original programming a week. We're also in discussion with representatives of the Mexican government regarding the NAFTA agreement and trying to see what kind of neighborly cooperation and using the electronic superhighway north-south to increase our information flow. And so we see the 12th and C Street or some other similar property and our development fundraising endeavors as an opportunity to expand what is a very cramped facility, and to offer that in partnership. And our board, staff, and volunteers are moving diligently in that direction. The rest of the notes, I won't go through them, but just commenting again and updating you on our collaborations with educational institutions, notably Cassandra River College, the Sacramento County Office of Education, ROP program, and Sacramento High School in the City School District. And that at the Reno conference of the Alliance for Community Media, we were honored by winning 3 awards, 2 for the same program, the program cooperatively produced with the County Office of Education ROP program, and also another one by a staff member. And other highlights too in terms of upcoming projects, but most importantly the installation of the cameras provided via a production grant through this commission are now installed, and the cables that were long delayed by the vendor are now in place. We want to thank Metro Cable staff, Rich and Randy, for providing the use of their cables on 2 occasions while we were waiting for our own, and because of that we were able to videotape Coretta Scott King. And also want to thank Sacramento Cable and the ED Consortium for helping us to promote that program. So that concludes my update. If you have any questions.
Does anyone have questions of Ron? We would want to thank you, Ron, for a very comprehensive overview of what you've been doing.
I have a question, though.
Oh,
Ron, tell me about, again, the how you're going to keep the funds separate when you run your bingo operation and the funds you receive from this commission. How will you do that specifically? Have you worked out a system? Have you checked with staff? What's your plan?
Yes, part of it is per this negotiation process. The owners of the property are quite clear that the property has not been leased out for over a year. And they have approached the idea of establishing nonprofit bingo as an opportunity to enhance the community and also to provide a facility to an appropriate nonprofit group. In our negotiations with them, we're quite clear that not only this nonprofit, but any nonprofit has limited, if any, resources, and that those resources, whatever they are, must be protected. So this is high on the list in terms of our negotiation, that the owners themselves, by pursuing nonprofit bingo and seeking a manager such as Access Sacramento, will have to share in that, or in fact make sure that the resources necessary to open the doors and keep it open for the first year are negotiated favorably on behalf of Access Sacramento. We find it to be a unique situation and find the owners of the property very cooperative. So hopefully I'll be able to report some good news at next month's meeting.
Toby?
Go ahead, Jim.
In other words, are you saying, and from my interpretation of what you just said, is that if it doesn't work out, you don't have to live out the full extent of your lease?
That's part of our negotiation.
Okay, Mrs. Collins.
No, I just was going to indicate that, and I assume you've already done this, but the County of Sacramento has a lot of so-called bingo parlors where they're occupied by nonprofits. One of those is KVIE, I believe, still does that, Asian Nursing Home, various nonprofits, and they have a lot of experience in doing that. I'm sure that you could talk to them. That is run through, at least at the county level, it's run through the treasurer's office, and so all of those books are audited, and they're able to keep records in terms of what's done, what's used for payouts, what actually comes back, what percentage of it is the nonprofit. Percentages did dip this year. They used to get about 12% for the nonprofits. I think they dipped to about 10.5% on average this year. I didn't see the individuals nonprofits done out, and that's because of the intense competition for really the same pool of people, and which means the payouts have had to go bigger. But I'm sure that if you've talked to all of them and figured out how they have managed to keep their monies from not being jeopardized, but the money has to be earned off the bingo. That's what the rent for the landowner and everything has to come out of those bingo monies. And at least in the county, it has to be completely run by volunteers.
It's business.
Yeah.
Yes, and that, to use Craig Powell's favorite word, that is the conundrum in starting up a facility, especially a facility of this size. And you're right, the county code, and there are many, I think 6 or 7 of similar size bingo parlors in the county. There's only one of similar size in the city. Right. And the code between the city and the county are quite similar, but frankly the code for the county is much more involved and much more detailed. And it would be our goal to actually work under those guidelines, because I think they are much more explicit.
Well, those guidelines came about with a lot of pain,
I'm sure,
on the part of the nonprofits, and so I think at this point everyone is really happy that we finally worked out all the rough spots, and that the nonprofits are actually getting the money, and it has kept a lot of not so legitimate nonprofits out of the picture.
Yes. Yes, and again, we're using those guidelines, the guidelines of the city, using the experience of these other organizations that we've been in contact with, again, and also, you're right, the revenues have dipped, and also I think that's a reflection of the economy currently in terms of expendable income. But one of the advantages to this particular location, both from a bingo parlor facility and also from a community resource center, is its central location in the heart of downtown Midtown. So that's what we hope to see there is a wonderful community center that is fueled by the revenues provided by nonprofit bingo. That's our goal.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, David DeBaca.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is David Vaca, and I'm chairperson of the SECC, Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. Just two quick items. First, you may recall that we announced to you that we will be moving from our current site at the Northgate Boulevard over to the KVIE building. That is in the planning process right now, and we'll be doing that in 2 weeks. So
that'll be great.
If anyone has an extra hand truck, you're welcome to join us. We're very excited about something that just occurred today. The Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium will be carrying live coverage of the shuttle endeavor and its mission to repair the Hubble telescope starting tomorrow on Channel 22 during times that are not scheduled with local programs. The program is carried thanks to NASA Select, which is the teleconferencing group that is affiliated with NASA, Sacramento City College, and Sacramento Cable. And I do have for you, if you can read it, I've been trying to in the last hour to read it myself, the schedule of that event. Actually, will not be on every moment that it is on, but we'll be joining them at different points during the next few days.
Thank you, David. Did you have anyone else? Not on this? Okay. That's all the grantees. Move to the final item then is public opportunity to speak, and the first person is Mr. Stoller. Mr. Stoller, excuse me.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, distinguished committee members. My name is Dave Stoller. I live in Fair Oaks. The reason why I'm here is to complain about SAC Cable Television. First off, just listening to what the gentleman from SAC Cable said regarding their hold times for customers. Since I am a customer and I've had reason to contact SAC Cable Television in the last month, the 4-minute time wait that they stated, I think, is way off base. On the 2 occasions that I've talked to them, I've been on hold for well over 30 minutes, just waiting from the time that their recorder answers the phone and goes through their advisements pre-recorded to the time you get to a service rep. It's well over 30 minutes. Not that far over 30 minutes. The second item that I wanted to talk about is the another item that they had talked about earlier, the outlets. Due to the Federal Communications Commission's recent rulings, customers are now able to have more outlets without being charged a $7 or so monthly service charge. I called Sacramento Cable wanting to have additional outlets in my house. I have 6 outlets in a house, 4 bedrooms, and then 2 in the family room, and I don't think that's an excessive amount compared to the houses that are being pre-wired these days. Prior to the Cable Commission's ruling, I only had 1 outlet working, which was in the family room. SAC Cable Commission, or SAC Cable Television, stated that they couldn't boost the outputs from 3 to 6 without having some sort of amplification, which is allowed by the FCC, but they do not have an amplification system available to customers, or customers cannot install it. I haven't checked on trying to purchase an amplification system. If I was to hotwire the rest of the house, they said that they were going to have to come out anyway to check the installation, and I would incur a $20 fee. And I think that's kind of, not really excessive for them coming out, but not allowing customers to pre-wire the house to those, to every outlet. They're limiting the use of a person's house, not being able to have cable in the other rooms. Second thing or the third thing, is the inferior service by the service reps. Once you finally get to somebody, you speak to somebody, they'll tell you something, you'll do it, you call back based on their advisement, and then they start telling you different things. And there's no way, unless I'm a legal secretary or something and I jot down every little information that the person tells me, take their name, what time I talked to them. You can't track down what the person, who you talked to said when you talk to the supervisor the next day or the next time that you're talking. So they need to update their computer systems where they can jot down what transpired for that particular person or account. When I called the Sacramento Cable Commission to complain about that, the person said, I'll take all the information down, and didn't hear anything until I called a week or so later, and they really advised me that I need to come down and speak with you people regarding that. Apparently what happens when a person calls...
They told you to come down and talk with us?
Well, come down and voice my complaints and concerns.
Was this Sacramento Cable told you to do this, or...?
No, that was the cable person at the Cable Commission.
Oh, the Cable Commission, okay.
Told me to come down and voice my concerns.
Okay.
Apparently what happens is when a person calls in to complain to SAC Cable Commission, they'll send off all the forms and all the complaints to SAC Cable Television, and they won't respond until they get 10 or 12, apparently, is what the lady told me. And I think that's kind of foolish. For the Commission is insulating SAC Cable Television by not requiring them to respond to the complaints immediately or within a reasonable...
I'd always understood that was what they did, but we'll find out.
No, the person that I spoke with, the lady said that they hold the complaints, SAC Cable, and they won't respond until they get 5 or 10.
Now, this was somebody at the Commission told you this. This wasn't Sacramento Cable.
That was somebody at the Commission told me that they generally hold the complaints until they get 5 or 10 complaints, then they will respond.
Okay.
I still haven't heard regarding the amplification.
We'll get you an answer right now.
Then the final thing really is the late charges. You know, I've dropped my service down after all these rules. They keep removing services like the Bay Area stations and such. Now, they had no problem when these new Federal Communication Commission regulations came in place. I did not originally go with a cable box. I told them I'm going to decide if I'm going to keep my cable box or not. I got 4 or 5 calls from people at Sacramento Cable Television trying to get me to come by and pick up a SAC cable converter box so I can get the limited basic like I had. I told them I'm deciding and I'll make a decision if I'm going to go with just limited basic, because their system, you can't use your VCRs when you have their cable boxes, or it gets too complicated. So I finally decided against it, turn the box in, and now that I have this limited basic, I was a few days late in making a payment. They charge a $5 late charge on a $10 service, which is a 50% late penalty, which I think is excessive, and I'm concerned about that for the 80,000 or so customers that have limited basic. I would hope that the Sacramento Cable Commission would oversee, the rates and the penalties for being late. And that's basically all I have to say.
That's quite a bit. Did you get the name of the party that told you to come over and report this to the Cable Commission?
It's a lady that I spoke with who answers the phone generally.
There's several ladies that answer the telephone.
I did not take a name and number. As I said, I'm not a legal secretary, and I don't take...
That's fine for now. In the future, ask who you're talking with, and then we can deal directly with the party instead of having you talk to several people. Mr. Espaso, do you want to respond to this?
Take a couple of perspectives. One, and I'm not familiar with your complaint directly. I know you talk with one of the support staff. We have 3 people, Diane, Nancy, and Susan, who work with us. The reference to the 10 subscribers, may be to our understanding of Sacramento Cable's policy when there's a reception outage, a potential outage problem.
No, this had nothing to do with an outage or potential outage. My first complaint was regarding the amplification. I called, I wanted Sacramento Cable to hotwire. I had moved some furniture and I moved the outlet from one.
I think we're going to have quite a bit of deliberation. After this meeting is over, talk with Mr. Esposito and he'll get this matter corrected. Can you also get it corrected that matters of this type should be attended to by the Commission whenever possible, if it's by the staff of the Commission, when it's necessary, corrected to us, but it seems to me this matter should have been corrected and properly handled.
Although, Mr. Chairman, members, one of the operating policies we have in the office is that when we have gone through our standard procedures, which is to try and understand the complaint, write it up, fax it out to SAC Cable. SAC Cable has a 10-day time to respond to the constituent and advise us of the clearance. If the constituent, if the subscriber still has concerns, doesn't feel that we've done a good enough job or SAC Cable has responded, one of the things we always say is that this is a public forum. You have a right to come here and speak.
Right, they do have that right.
We always try first, but we always we let them know that the process is open.
But whenever, and it seems most of the time it should be feasible for someone in your office to get this thing corrected with the person calling in.
If we weren't working with SAC Cable and SAC Cable working with us, this room would be full.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we thank you very much, Mr. Stoller. And then if you'll talk with Mr. Esposito right after the meeting, he'll help you get things corrected.
I would like to ask Rich a question also, since I am getting complaints in my office about hold times that correspond to his constituents phoning and saying they're held 20 and 30 minutes. They're calling in to change service, to drop something. And is there any way we confirm? Because we heard today that they say that they're getting a handle on that.
They're getting it in 4 minutes.
We'll
ask Ms. Patterson to come forward and answer.
Now, I'm asking Rich if we have a way to independently verify any of that, because I am getting complaints from constituents that they're 20 and 30 minutes on hold.
That's correct. As a staff operation, I do ask the staff on selected time frames. I'll usually say for the next 3 weeks, please call Sacramento Cable 3 or 4 times a day at random times on different lines. Time the call using the timers on our phones, and report to Sacramento Cable Nancy does it. Nancy would say, "This is Nancy at the Cable Commission. I'm monitoring your calls today. We've been on hold for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I monitor the staff for this month. The data that we have support the 3 to 4 minute average hold time. Although in the last 2 days, the numbers have come down. I'm aware also that one of the TV stations in town has been doing the same thing. And where they provided me their data as well. So we have our own independent data. I use that on the quarterly basis to compare with the presentation that Sacramento Cable is required to make under your regs to cross-reference. And I have some disagreements with the SAC Cable reporting system that provides us, data. What I do know, or what I do believe to be true, is that since August, even before the announcement of the rate changes due to the FCC, SAC Cable has been outside of compliance with your rate regulations, and that continues through on average, your telephone regulations, I have rate regulations on the brain, up until the current time period. The issues for staff are, what are the priorities and what is the Commission's pleasure relative to enforcement factors, and where should we be putting our staff time? Analysis of the rate regulations is a near full-time job. I have 5 or 6 other areas that ought to be looked in as well. We just don't have the resources, the staff time to do it. Telephones are one.
Okay, well, the pattern looks like it's coming back down again, though. So
in the last week, it looks like the pattern is coming down.
He reported 4 minutes average time, I think, today, didn't he?
I know, but I was trying to get an independent assessment. It sounds to me like we do have at least some tools to do it.
We are making
scientific, but we do have some tools, and it looks like the pattern is back down again.
It looks like the pattern in the last 2 days may be down. Diane, Nancy, you could say otherwise. Yesterday and today it's come down, but for the month of November, we are in the 3 to 4 minute range on average. Some running much longer.
Terry has a question to ask.
Are there in the rate regulations, an interesting pamphlet, Grant, by the way, are there provisions for the 50% late fee Is that regulated in any way?
No, late charge is not regulated. It must be disclosed. There are restraints in the State Act now, the Video Customer Service Act, which is in the process of being implemented, as Rich said, that regulate when a late charge may be imposed. For example, it may not be imposed before the 22nd day after the mailing of the bill. That's by law. So there is that kind of restraint in terms of its imposition. There is all kinds of disclosure requirements, and the premise is, your disclosure requirements, the premise is the customer should know before he's obligated what the risks are of late payments. But there is no rate regulatory ability on the level, the level itself of the late charge.
So it could be as much as 100% if they...
It could be any number they wish to make it. But the theory is the customer doesn't have to sign the contract. He should know, he must know, it must be disclosed to him before he signs the contract, before he becomes obligated to your regulations, what it is. If he knows what it is and he signs a contract, then it's a matter of contract.
But you say that they can't charge a late charge until the 22nd day after their mailing. How do you check? Do you have to keep the envelope of where it was stamped by the post office on when they mailed it?
Certainly anyone who has concerns about the billing practices should save the envelope, should save the bill, should save all of the evidence. I mean, I hear the comment about people don't want to be legal secretaries, people probably don't want to be lawyers. But the real world is that if you
we wouldn't mind
wish
being
to
lawyers.
make a case that someone is not living up to a regulation or a law, you really have to save the evidence. So it would
Let me
certainly be helpful.
add one more comment as far as the late fee goes. I think as just individually, we get a lot of complaints on it. It is quite onerous. But I have to say that from a customer assistance standpoint, Sacramento Cable acts quite reasonably when we can get the constituent in touch with Sacramento Cable. If it's a subscriber who has a solid payment history and has been on vacation, has aired, the cable company is very good about waiving the fee if and when they get to them. The difficulty we hear is that the phones are busy, they can't get through to say that, hey, look, I really don't want this fee, I've never been late in 4 years, would you waive it? They get frustrated waiting on the phone, so then they go off. But cable has a good record of waiving the fee for people who are not routine late payers.
Mr. Chairman, the Cable Commission staff has just set me straight. There's no postmark on the envelopes received by the subscribers, so there's no sense in saving the envelope. But they should save all the communications, including any
How do you know when they mailed it then?
I'm sorry?
How do you know when it gets mailed if there's no mark?
If there's no mark on it, you don't know.
Right. We did deal with this issue in your customer service regulations, and the time frame is 20 days. We assume 3 days for mailing in that process. So we've made an
Unless you mail
assumption.
from Carmichael, then you can wait a lot longer.
Seems like customers always in the clear. He said, I just got it yesterday.
Rich?
Ms. Patterson, do you want to make comment?
Yes, I would like to respond just briefly to a couple of these issues. I'm Darby Patterson, Community Relations Manager for Sacramento Cable. In terms of the on-hold time, I know from personal experience that 10 minutes on the telephone definitely feels like 30. I experience every time I call SMUD. And I myself often give up. So I know it feels like a very long time. And people have to understand that we are talking about averages, and I appreciate the fact that Rich is monitoring our customer service lines, and I do the same. I often make calls throughout the week myself from outside the plant, just to check and see when I have somebody coming up to me and shaking my lapels and saying, I waited for 30 minutes for somebody to answer the telephone, that in fact this is happening. So I check, and my experience also has been between 3 and 4 minutes, and over the weekend I actually got through immediately with no hold time, and actually I have to say that surprised me just briefly, but I think we're doing a whole lot better, and of course we intend to.
I think that's our problem.
I was going to offer the comment of the week, but he's going to give it to you.
So. The comment of the week is, if you'd all stop monitoring the lines, you could get through.
Oh. All right, Rich, do you hear that?
Well, if you're getting 10,000 calls a month, our 100 calls a month don't make that much difference.
Fairly significant. I would like to address a couple of things that Mr. Stoller brought up. And also in terms of the additional outlets, I have been informed, and of course, once again, I am not a technician, and I always get real educated after these questions are asked. But when people have more than 3 outlets, there is a kind of a requirement for a booster, and it's a federal requirement. We are purchasing these boosters, and we are going to sell them at our cost to individuals. And that, at this point, is all the information I have about it. But if you want more than that, I certainly will get it, and I'll advise you after the meeting. I'll send you all notes about that. It has something to do with the decibel power that's sent through the lines, and that's all I know, but I'll just know a whole lot more about that within a couple of days. The other issue, of course, is the calls on the cable box. I'm very sorry he felt that we made too many calls, but we were trying to be very conscientious about letting people know that they needed the converter box, and over again we made a really great effort, and sometimes we may have duplicated our efforts in trying to do a good job at this. The other issue is that Mr. Jones assures me that all of our billing requirements in terms of the late charges are absolutely accurate and according to all of the regulations. In fact, as Rich said, we are really quite generous and open to people who have a problem the first time. We usually have a discussion with them and try to educate them about our policies, and we don't charge them. We simply waive those charges. So we try real hard to work with our customers on that issue, and it's really too bad that we can't please everybody, but we try to please as many people as we possibly can. The other thing, of course, is how many times it takes us to respond to complaints through the Cable Commission, and I think our relationship with the people of the Cable Commission in terms of complaints is really very good, and we work real hard to turn those around. We definitely do not wait until we have 10 or 12 sitting in front of us, because at any given time I'm sure we have many more than that, and our people get on those as quickly as possible, and there is absolutely no such policy as was mentioned. I want to assure you of that. If there's any other kinds of questions, other than it has something to do with something that plugs in, I'd be really happy to answer.
Apparently no more. Thank you very much for giving your comments. And
Mr. Chairman, let me put a response back from recollection. In a previous life, I worked on the construction and technology and the system specifications for the system. And what I'd like to have Dane confirm, it's my recollection that your design specs in 1982-83 assumed system power of 4 outlets per home. I'll confirm that with Dane, but it's my recollection that we spec the system to anticipate 4 outlets per home.
Okay.
I believe that you're right, Rich, and when we were talking before about additional outlets and we were talking about how many we would be able to accommodate people with, I think the number 4 was mentioned. I think now that this has become a reality with re-regulation, that there's been some rethinking about this on a federal level. So I don't think that it's just us. I think it's another case of some things being really untested.
We'll anxiously await your report back to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We
members of the commission.
Oh, we have questions from staff. Okay, Ms. Collins. Oh, got it. Oh,
all the way down. Okay,
everybody's going crazy.
No, I want to get out.
We'll start with the lady first.
Okay, I'd like 2 items scheduled for the January agenda. One of those has to do with and I don't care if you put it on the 6th or the 2nd, we have a second meeting? No, we don't have a second meeting.
One meeting in December 6th,
well, then let's try it on December 6th. We have had interest by people. In fact, people are very unhappy about the home shopping network. And I've gotten letters as well as just individuals angry, some of them really angry because they've lost C-SPAN and gained home shopping, which they hate. And so I think that we ought to take a position. We ought to put that on the agenda to have the staff develop a letter in opposition to these as must-carries. It's ridiculous to have these on there as must-carries when there doesn't seem to be any sort of demand on the part of constituents for them in that kind of a setting. That would be one item. The second item relates to sort of hangs on to this other one, and that is the fact that Supervisor Cox did make some comments about Rich getting the complaints to him. I'm now getting complaints from his constituents too. And the complaints have to do with something that came up earlier, which is problems in terms of the poor reception and the pictures jumping. Now, if it had only been 1 or 2 people from Supervisor Cox's district making those complaints, and I guess they've complained to him, they've complained to you, there's been no resolution of it. According to the one person said, the repairman still maintains it's the cable's problem. and cable refuses to do anything about it. I guess they don't think it's their problem. It's that kind of a thing. You can't deal with it because you don't know who's right. But then I started getting complaints from a few other people that their pictures are jumping, things are happening. I'm wondering if there is a bigger problem or not. Is this something, that I would like just a report back, Rich, from you, if you've had any number of those? Have they been in certain areas? Do we need to use some of our resources, some of our money resources to have our former engineers, or current engineers, I guess, Dane, take a look at some of these areas and see if we're having any real problems in the system from an engineering standpoint? System is getting older, I understand that, but and it might be that this is something else is causing this, but I would just love to know, because
turning on your electric heater will cause a lot of little lines.
Who turns on an electric heater?
Just as old-fashioned
Just
people.
put another coat on, for heaven's sake. Go ahead, Orville.
Well, my VCR refuses to accept the new signals. I don't know if it's just an independent VCR or it's tired, the signal that is, by the time it gets to Galt. I started calling up there, and I thought, well, I'll wait for a month and see if things settle down, but I don't know whom to call. All I want you to know, I'm a dissatisfied customer on the fact of how should a VCR operate in the year of '93. Next
You got to get a new VCR, probably.
It is new.
Okay, going on to Mr. Castanis. You're happy complaining.
I'd like to know from staff what milestone to look forward to down the line regarding regulations. The rates, we have hearings on the rates and establish those when? What meeting?
Well, the resolution you passed today calls for us to notice a public hearing, which is required by the FCC regulations, at your next regularly scheduled.
So do that in January.
Yes. Now, whether with the holidays coming up, we're going to immediately engage in the dialogue that Rich indicated and present the questions to SAC Cable, but realistically, by the time they get them, they're going to be right in the middle of the holidays. Whether we'll actually be ready to go forward at that time, or whether you'll want to continue the public hearing, but you will have the option to do that. So you will have the option to take final action at any point. But whether you'll have all the data or not with the holiday period is problematical. But,
so that's the next milestone regarding the rate regulations. Is that correct?
Is to notice the hearing.
Yes.
I missed last meeting, but I did view the tape, and I understand that the discrepancy about the traps and so on did go to a hearing officer. Has that taken place yet?
No, and there's no staff status anymore, but let me just bring you up to date on what happened. After that, after the meeting, I had a discussion with Mr. Fudge up the way here, and he has another lawsuit here in Sacramento for SAC Cable on December the 6th, and he told me that with that lawsuit pending, he simply didn't have time to focus on this, and we agreed as a matter of professional courtesy to give him an extension, so we won't even be attempting to select the hearing officer until December 15. And once we do that, then again we will, it's all spelled out, and we will select the hearing officer, establish a meeting with him. I think realistically we probably won't have, Mr. Fudge suggested, a status conference with the hearing officer in early January. Whether we can beat that schedule or not is, again, going to be difficult. Probably the hearing itself won't occur until late January or sometime in February, and that'll be entirely dependent upon Mr. Fudge's schedule, our hearing officer's schedule, and so forth. So, but that's probable timeline.
So you don't see it coming to us until March?
Well, it's hard to speculate. It would depend. That would also depend. This hearing officer under the regs hears the evidence, formulates a decision, and gives you a written decision for you to accept. There are several things you can do to it.
Right.
Allowing time for that to do, generally a hearing officer will take at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks to do that after the hearing. So you can almost put these time schedules together in your mind. I would think that the earliest it would come to you would be February. That's highly doubtful.
Sounds
I think
like
March is a better guess.
Sounds like March. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yee, do you have something you'd like to add?
Well, let me just say I'm a happy camper.
Well,
Other than one request from SAC Cable to update me on what the situation is regarding SAC Cable and KTSF, the
KTSF sends us all a letter.
programming.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Josh Panay.
Just a question for our legal counsel. I'm just wondering, is it possible that the commission would look at, say, the affirmative action goals and program of the operator? Do we have that within our regulatory authority?
The answer is yes. At the time of our franchise, the legal team broke up the matters, and that particular area was handled by then City Attorney Jackson. It was his determination that we did not have at that time the ability to mandate such requirements because there was not a demonstrated history of discriminatory acts. If you came to a situation where you developed such a history, then you would have the authority to make those impositions. You would not have the authority under law unless you had that evidence.
I'm wondering, members, I'd like to request a little look. I know that Darby has just written very eloquently on this in the Sacramento Union, and I know she's committed to that. But I'm just wondering if we could have our staff present to us just a little review of that whole situation from Sacramento Cable, to have the board be briefed on it and understand what's going on at Sacramento Cable, our franchisor. I would like to see that.
Okay, can you arrange for that, Rich?
I can send all those next week.
Darby will do it.
I'll send everything to you that you need. We're in wonderful shape.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could have a little review of that in session at our next meeting and take a look at that and maybe have Mr. Ruckert come up and...
Would you like to have that included in Mr. Ruckert's remarks next month?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If the materials provided to staff will certainly include it in the agenda packet. I would offer, though, in terms of resources available, it may be limited to do much analysis with the data. If the commission's pleasure, we could possibly get the county affirmative action people or someone else to look at it. But I feel staff's priorities now are on the benchmark ratings. I wouldn't mind getting outside help on that. I don't have time.
Well, I would certainly be willing to see that from either our affirmative action people in the city or the county or whatever we could do. I don't know if you can make an arrangement about that. I would like to see some analysis of it, staff analysis, and if our staff isn't able to, if that would be okay, I'd like to see it.
Sounds like both the staff and SAC Cable are willing to cooperate on that.
I think if you made the request at the city and the same request came to the county, that to look at the data, they could combine their resources to look at it.
I think Rich can work with the two.
And then, I guess in that, I'd like to hear from Sacramento Cable and their perspective on how they view that whole subject matter. And if there's anything pending that they would like to talk about, I'd love to hear it, anything that they have. Okay?
Okay, Darby? Okay. Sounds good. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? If not, we're about to close this meeting. We'd like to thank you all for being in attendance. Hope you'll be back in '94. It'll be even a bigger and better year than what '93 has been.
I would hope so.
Happy Yuletide season to all of you.
Merry Christmas.